Okay. Hey, let's get a couple of these questions in. And you know, on a program like this, you're going to get this question, and you really can't fault some of these writers of this type of question I'll ask you now because of the litany of television programs, unexplained mysteries, you name it. And so I'll sum up probably six or 10. I haven't looked through all of them yet, but at least 10 questions regarding any sort of, during your travels, did you see any UFO activity?
No, I have no first-hand experience with UFO activity. However, I have been briefed. I am very knowledgeable in the subject matter, not in all the details. But let's make no mistake about it. We have been visited.
Really?
And it's been covered up by many countries, but the nations are now starting to open up, and I think it'll open up in our country here in the next, well, certainly within the next decade.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been a number of us trying to get this disclosure opened up as quickly as possible. And as more and more people come to accept this reality, it'll happen very soon.
Are you in any way involved with Stephen Greer?
I worked with Stephen for some time. We don't really work together these days, but we did at one point, and we're both of the same mind that we need to open this up.
And I think you're right, though. It does seem that different countries, at least 3 or 4 in the last year, have opened up their files.
Well, the Belgians have been very open for a long time. France with the Cometa report, and then Brazil and Mexico in the last couple of years have opened their files. So
do you think
it's moving along?
Okay. So do you think that if someone, let's go back to your book here, somebody were to read this book, and which I have, and it's very interesting, by the way, and thank you, your publisher, for sending that to me. For others to read this book, what would you, as the writer, expect them to come away with?
Well, hopefully a little more insight into what the Apollo program is about, and also the insight as to the experience I had in space and the rationale for moving into this type of experience, scientific work, to try to bring the spiritual world and the science world, and instead of making it a duality that never the twain shall meet, to bring a common understanding here, that's part of our reality, and instead of being at opposite ends of the pole of the world, we got to put it together in some way. And that's been my objective all along. And the way I thought to do that was because for these 400 years since Cartesian times, science has simply not addressed the issue of consciousness. Why are we conscious at all? And the manifestations of this. The two extremes of thought go clear back to the Greeks and the idealist notion that everything is mind, everything is conscious, and the extreme of that is that matter is simply an illusion and a maya, an illusion. The other extreme, of course, is scientific reductionism that says consciousness is just an epiphenomenon of matter accidentally bumping together in our universe, and we're conscious because of that. Those are the two extremes. I have taken the position that I don't know the answer, but the answer lies somewhere in between those two extremes, and that if we use properly the tools of science and bring our intuition to bear on it also, and use them together both, we will eventually find the answers we're looking for.
And if you did find the answer, have you ran through your mind what that could, the possible outcomes of that answer?
Sure. The two great mysteries, if we're talking about consciousness at the moment, the great mystery, as far as we humans are concerned, is does consciousness itself survive death? That's number one. Well, actually, the first question is, what is it? And does it survive death? And we don't have a testable way of answering that question at this point. It's a matter of faith. It's a matter of our personal experience. It's a matter of religious belief. But we do not have a scientific way of really testing that. And even though there are so-called mediums around that try to test to it, that doesn't produce the sort of evidence that science demands.
Have you found, and you mentioned consciousness, why, the question why man has consciousness, but is there any other entity, animal-wise, say, bug-wise, plant-wise, that has conscious?
Of course. In the models that I use, I start with the notion here in the quantum world of entanglement, that this very mysterious facet of nature called quantum entanglement is the most basic aspect of awareness, because we have said for 80 years, almost in quotation marks, that entangled particles, even though they go across the universe from each other subsequent to entanglement, that you do something to one particle, the other one reacts to it, or, quote, unquote, knows what's happened, knows what's going on. If we use that as the most fundamental, testable aspect of awareness, then I take that approach that complex matter, as molecular structure becomes more complex, its awareness function becomes more complex, so that we know very well that plants, for example, respond across a Faraday cage barrier to threat, and we know the green thumb effect, that love plants and they flourish better. These phenomena, there have been experiments carried out that show that this works across Faraday cage barriers, and that the more complex the molecular structure you get up into the animal world that have brain, where brain is involved, and we see that that those animals become self-aware. They can distinguish self from the environment that they're in, whereas plants just respond to the environment. And then we get to the higher primates that have a certain sense of not only self-aware, but self-reflective aware. And then we get to the human that has definite self-reflection. We can not only think about our thinking, but we can think about our thinking about our thinking. And so it's another order of complexity. And it's undoubtedly true that we're not the most evolved species in the universe, I suspect. Mm-hmm. And we can go on beyond that. So these levels of consciousness that we're talking about begins with simple awareness, and we find that at the quantum level of nature, at simply particles. And it becomes more complex, and more complex the biological organism becomes.
Okay. We have this question. Did you or any other astronaut go on the dark side of the moon?
Well, first of all, there's not a dark side of the moon. There's a back side of the moon. The fact is that the one side of the moon faces the Earth all the time. And, of course, yes, we went around it. And when you're doing that, you're always going to go through away from the sun, which is the dark side. But all sides of the moon get equally lighted in a lunar day, which is 24 days long. Mm-hmm. And the back side of the moon is far more rugged than the front side, mm-hmm. because the craters that were made by meteor impact over the billions of years on the front side, because of gravitational attraction between the two planets, got filled up with lava, volcanic flow from the interior of the moon, yeah, and subsequently bombarded with meteor impacts for billions of years to its a fine dust, mm-hmm. whereas the backside is much more rough.
Yeah, than the front side. I think the idea of there being a dark side of the moon came from a band called the Pink Floyd. They wrote a song about it. So most of us in our American conscience have that dark side of the moon mentality. So now, just going back to sort of an earlier question, now, when you were there, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, you didn't see any evidence of any other activity there on the moon there, did you?
Life activity. No, we saw nothing. I have not seen any evidence of that. Now, I would not doubt, I do not deny the possibility that the visitors here might have had some activity there, but I've not seen any evidence of it at all.